out of it was a little bit about her family. So she did want me to share that she is married and has 2 children, and they have an adorable chocolate lab who probably keeps them quite busy. I've had a lab, I know that. Stephanie graduated from Westfield High School in 1988, and then she went to Pitt for her undergrad, and then she went to New York Academy of Art for her master's in fine art. But here's where she really landed. She was talking a lot about her mom and her dad, and clearly had just such respect for her mom, and that her mom worked at the Westfield Daycare Center and now works at the Westfield Y Child Care Center. The other thing she wanted me to share, which I think many here can relate to, but will also warm your heart, is that Stefanie said she and her whole family, their heart is really in Westfield. Stefanie also has, because we all know that hearts are not divided, our hearts only grow with love. Stefanie's heart is also in Cranford. So, 2 fabulous communities to share your heart with, right? So that said, let me turn the presentation over to Stefanie Lalor. Did I say it right? Yeah, baby. Yeah. I practiced. And she's talking about the name of her shop, but also the topic is the artist framer.
Thank you so much for coming out to support me. It's amazing to see so many friends here tonight. I have to say that the greatest gift that the Artist Framer has given to me are the friends that I have made and the people that I have met over the years. I'm very lucky. I want to thank Linnea Rhodes for inviting me to speak tonight. When she asked me to speak, well, Linnea and I have been friends for many years, and I was delighted. She asked me to speak, and she gave me a list of the Hale speakers that came before me. And I have to say that Westfield is a very special place, and it breeds success. So the other wonderful thing about our zip code here is that you can trek down to the beach, or you can jump on a train and go into the city, and both of those things have been an important part of my life. I want to also thank Marcy Lechner. I think she might have had something to do with how full this room is. She did a nice press release for me. And Jennifer set me up so that I could be heard tonight. I appreciate that. And my friend Darren made my slides pretty. So I'm going to figure this out real quick. I grew up on Grove Street. Grove Street was a wonderful street to grow up on. Throughout my education, I was able to walk to school. So I started at Lincoln School until 4th grade, then on to Tamauquas, then Edison Junior High, and on to the high school. At Tamauquas School, I was lucky to have Mrs. Cantor as my art teacher. She was wonderful, very creative. She had us work with clay and tempera. We painted on the walls in the hallway, and she even had us sewing. A very creative teacher, and I fell in love with art in that 5th grade year. Then off to high school, I studied with Art Silvera. He was our art teacher, and he encouraged me in my pursuit of representational art, which is drawing and painting realistically. My interest was in portraits back then, even primarily. And I had done a portrait of Mr. Silvera in pencil, which hung above the door in the art room for the entire time I was at the high school and probably thereafter. So on Grove Street, I met my 2 best friends. And my one best friend knew from the time that she was young that she wanted to be a doctor. So we came of age to get a job, and off we went to Dr. Oliver Brown's office downtown. We both could walk there, and that was our first job. I knew within the first week that I was a fish out of water. She loved it, on the other hand. But fortunately, at that time, my mother had to pick something up at the local frame shop that she had had framed. and that was the Stephen Davis Gallery on New Street off of Central Ave. I walked in there and knew that that was my place. I loved the gallery. I got a peek at the back room, and I thought, this is where I want to be. The gentleman that owned it said I was too young. So, only 2 weeks later, he called my mother's number, and he had a project that was 50 record albums that all needed to be put into metal frames with plexiglass, and it had to be done quickly. And he called and said he could use my hands. So I went in, and he knew I took like a fish to water at that job. I fell in love, and I was with Jack. He taught me everything he knew about framing. I was with him until I went to the University of Pittsburgh. So that was that was when I fell in love with framing. So Mr. Silvera had me fall in love with art, and Jack Eckler with framing. It is my 50-50 passion. This is a great slide. On the left, I'm painting on a rooftop in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and I'm painting the sunrise. It went so fast. The painting wasn't much to write home about, but it was a really great experience. On the other side, that's a picture. In our shop, we do a lot of very large pieces, so I'm posing there to show for scale. So that is my 50-50 passion. Now, I want to tell you more before I get to this. After high school, I had a little trouble finding my way. I had been accepted to the Maryland Institute College of Art my junior year of high school at a portfolio review. So I didn't look any further. I went straight to Maryland. And when I got there, I found that I missed my family, and it wasn't the best fit for me. So I stayed for a semester. I learned quite a bit. It's an excellent school, but I realized I needed to be closer to home. Rather than being closer to home, I found that Pittsburgh was the place because I had been born in Pittsburgh. All my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and my oldest brother were there. So I was able to leave my mother as long as I could be near to her sister. And I was at her place regularly. So I attended Pitt for the 4-year program. I have my BFA from the University of Pittsburgh, and it was a wonderful opportunity. The very first thing I did when I got to Pittsburgh in that first week was to find a frame shop. So I found a job right away at a frame shop called The Framesmith in Squirrel Hill. I worked there for the entire time that I was at Pitt. Pitt had great opportunities in art history, studio arts, and I even had an exceptional semester where I was allowed to draw after hours in the medical laboratories to work from the cadavers. So I spent a semester building a sketchbook of these drawings. It was a wonderful opportunity. When I was ready to finish at Pitt, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I loved the picture framing, but I also loved the art. So my boss, Ed, he had owned 2 shops at the time. His main frame shop on Murray Avenue, and then he had a satellite store which he wanted to sell. So Ed helped me to write a business plan and apply for a loan because I thought I might like to own his shop. Because I equally wanted to pursue art, I researched graduate schools, found the New York Academy of Art had all that I wanted. It was a representational school, teaching in the style of the old masters with concentration on the figure. So I applied to the New York Academy. I submitted my loan paperwork, and I decided I would leave it up to the stars, and whichever came back first would be the thing that I would do. So I was accepted to the New York Academy. I was excited to get back to New York. One thing that I had wanted to mention earlier, while I was in high school, Art Silvera had me interested in portraiture and representational art, but I wanted more than what I could get from high school. So I found classes at FIT on Saturdays, the Fashion Institute, which is located just a couple blocks from Penn Station. So even as a teenager, I could go in on my own, just walk to the school, and that's where I started taking basic life drawing classes and figurative painting and fashion illustration. The fashion illustration was key in helping me to really learn to draw well. It was a wonderful opportunity. So back to New York, because I loved it there, I moved to Brooklyn, and the first thing I did was find a job at a frame shop. So I went to work for a gentleman that had a shop on Atlantic Avenue called Make a Frame. The two things that frame shop and the one in Pittsburgh had in common is they were both do-it-yourself framing, which suited me perfectly because I love to talk to the customers. I enjoyed teaching them how to frame, getting to know the work that they brought in, and this was just a wonderful way for me to explore framing and meet people. And I have to say that the gentleman that I worked for in Brooklyn would say to me, "Steph, if you're going to talk that much, you're going to have to charge more." I really wasn't aggravated. So the New York Academy of Art was a wonderful place to study. This is a self-portrait that was done during that time. We studied for the first year, we learned mostly the grayscale. It's called a grisaille. A grisaille can be done in shades of values of gray. It could also be done just as a monochromatic painting. So it could be one color, but you're using the entire value scale to describe form. So we predominantly focused on that and on anatomy the first year. So the picture on the left, that is called, those sculptures are called écorchés. We took the year to build a 24-inch armature out of wire, and then we used plastiline, which is a clay that doesn't dry out, to carve out the skeleton. And this was all done while referring to a model that posed throughout each class. It was such a great experience. The second half of the year, we sculpted the musculature and then would apply it to the skeleton that we had made with its insertion and origin. I learned so much through this process, but I am a two-dimensional girl, and my écorché looked a lot more like Gumby than it did the model in front of me. We did a lot of copies from old masters, and we did a lot of cast drawing. They had a beautiful set of sculptures that had been casted in plaster that were available to us to draw. So the first year was spent mostly working from those casts and studying the anatomy. And it wasn't until the second year that we began painting and drawing primarily from the figure. These are some of my examples from that time. The one in the center would have been a painting done over a 6-week period, 3 hours a week. So I would have at that time, I work a little differently now, but back then I would draw the figure in pencil first or charcoal, like the one on the right-hand side, and then apply the paint. And the paint would be applied in layers over the course of the 6 weeks. The advantage of working over that much time is that you can let it dry and then sort of just do a light color on top or scumble something thicker. Now I work, because I do so much work, and I'll show you examples outside, it's more of a direct painting. It all happens in 3 to 4 hours. I do not have the time to do 6 weeks anymore. That was a luxury. So at the New York Academy, another opportunity for me to frame was this wonderful auction that they do. And back then, in the mid-90s, It was new. It was new to them. It's a huge fundraiser now that is held at Sotheby's. Back in the day, it was much smaller, but we still had some very famous people and students alike that would donate a work of art. The frames were also donated, and some of the frames were more valuable than the very valuable art. There was another student that worked alongside me, and she would marry the art to the frames, and then I would frame. Now, I was in a basement, and there was one little light that hung from the ceiling. I had a very small mat cutter. Some of these pieces were huge. I would be down there for hours cutting mats, cutting glass by hand, assembling them all. And then in the end, there was a beautiful gala event held in our cast hall, which was the first floor that normally held those casts that we drew from. And there were hundreds of pieces. There were celebrities that came, even in those early days. Robert De Niro came, Liv Schreiber supports that school, Brooke Shields. So it was quite the party and quite the event. I visited the New York Academy recently and went downstairs to see my old frame shop. And it is beautiful, state-of-the-art, well lit. I don't think they know how good they have it. Yeah, so that was wonderful to see. At the time that I was working on Take Home a Nude, my friends discovered that I had this talent for framing, and they had work that they needed to present. So I started framing for my friends as well. So much of that had been going on that I decided maybe it was time to start a business. So I chose the name The Artist's Framer, with an apostrophe S after the artist, because I was framing for artists. I learned that when you start a business, you go to Newark and you look through, because this was pre-computer, look through a big book and see if anybody in the county has your name. Well, there was no artist's framer, so I jotted it down on a piece of paper and handed it to the little old man behind the counter, and he looked at it and he said, "Do yourself a favor. Drop the apostrophe S." They were wise words. In advertising, that would have been difficult, especially now with social media. It just would have thrown a wrench in my works. Also, little did he know that my two passions would become my whole life, and I am the artist and the framer. So I had gone to a trade show in Philadelphia to look at moldings and mattings and materials that I could purchase to frame for my friends. On my way home, and I was literally on my way home from that trade show, I passed the purple building. And it was purple. That's a pretty early shot. There's no awning or anything. It looked almost like that back in 1999. And I pulled the car over. I said, "That's the perfect spot for a frame shop." And I have to tell you, I didn't think I would get to owning a shop until much later. At that time, I was teaching a portrait painting class in Manhattan. I was still framing for my friends. I didn't see it being a brick and mortar shop at that time in my life until I saw the purple building. So it had been a pet store for 8 years, and it was filthy. There was a little piece of paper taped to the window that said, "We're still framing on the go." So I called the phone number and I asked who owns that building. Well, they gave me the landlord's name, and inside of 2 weeks, I had a lease, I had a loan, because I already knew how to write a business plan, and the shop was mine. I couldn't believe it. I started with only the corner half, and it was about 1.5 years in that we were busting at the seams. I was open, I was not even officially open when I had my first sale. There was a woman who came in with, so my goal was to be open Black Friday. There was a woman who came in with a roll of 3 or 4 Thanksgiving Day parade posters. And I was so nervous. I went into the back room to figure out, now I have to ask her for money. But I remember she framed them in these fabulous red metal frames, and they looked dynamite. And it was just so exciting to me. So I didn't, if I have any regrets, it's that I should have minored in business. There was definitely a learning curve when I opened the shop. There was a lot I needed to know. And I learned the ups and downs of owning a business, a retail business. So just as I got a grip on things, 2008 hit and everything went upside down. Before that, I have to say, the community was so supportive of my new business that they just kept me busy. And I could really project what the following year would look like. I had a real handle on even my daily income. I would know what was my most quiet day. I could almost tell you to the penny what a Thursday evening would look like. We were open 7 days a week back then. And then when the recession hit, everything changed. But what I learned from that was I was able to keep my whole staff, and I learned to run lean. So I learned how to scale down my inventory and all those things that you need to do. But most importantly, I learned to bring the community into the shop, and I started having group shows. So those were the years where I had art associations show their work. The New Jersey Photo Forum had shown with me. There was a garden club that had shown work. They were these wonderful shows, and we had receptions, and the business started to grow in a way that I enjoyed and never expected to happen. In 2011, when Hurricane Irene hit, it was absolutely devastating to our communities, as we all know. And again, we stayed open, and really what we learned there was to help people with their waterlogged art, and we learned photo restoration. I took classes at Ducre School of Art to study photo restoration. A lot of the projects were just removing these water-damaged pieces, scanning them, restoring them, and it was so fulfilling to make people happy to know that they could have their photographs back again. So as each one of these major occurrences happened, we just kept growing because of them. Superstorm Sandy, well, that was crazy because the power was out. Thank God no water. But we had no power for, I think it was 10 days. And I said, no problem, guys. We've got this. I've got these old carbon copy receipts. We'll just use these. And realized everything was computerized. All of our equipment is computerized. Our Mag Cutter, our point-of-sale software. I can't price anything without my computer. So we laughed at that. But what we did was we stayed open. We were a little chilly. At 3 o'clock, the sun would go over the roof, and that would be time to close. But until then, we designed framing at the counter, and then when the electricity went back on, we let everybody know. We wrote it all up, called, gave proposals, and we kept going. So community is important. That really, again, it was like we had just opened. People were just bringing things to keep small business going. COVID was an awful, awful time, but I have to say some very important things came out of that for the artist framer. My friend Gail that's here tonight had early on, actually at Hurricane Irene, recommended to me the UCEDC, the Union County Economic Development Corporation. They help small businesses to acquire loans, and when COVID hit, I called right away the friends I have over there and said I'd like to apply for a loan just to float me in case this doesn't open up in 2 weeks like they expect. And of course it didn't. But I was grateful to have learned that. The UCEDC turned a loan around for me in only 4 days. And it was just nice to have that cushion. In the end, I was fortunate and didn't need it. We had gone into COVID with a large corporate job for American Express. So as everything was shutting down, literally, I was picking up hundreds of feet of molding, huge boxes of acrylic, because everything was oversized, and big foam board to support it and mount it, And then when it shut down, I went to work every day, chopped and joined the frames, assembled them, knowing that when things opened up again, they'd come and get their job and we'd get paid. The other thing about COVID was I stayed in the shop so that people knew that I would still be there with their things that are so special and dear to them when we reopened. I changed the windows regularly, and then I painted my rainbow on the window. But at first I thought, well, I'm getting so much done, there's nobody here to interrupt me. And then I started to miss everybody. So I reached out to my artists with an email, and I had in the back of my mind a show I had wanted to have, and I thought, this is the time. I asked them to make a master copy of their favorite work of art. And I said, when we reopen, we'll have a show. And that's what we did, and I was so grateful to have that connection. There were emails that went back and forth. I'm thinking of painting this. What do you think of that? And what size should it be? And that really kept me going. And we did have that show, and we still have, we call it our Fabulous Fakes. We still have an annual Fabulous Fakes, and it's one of my favorites. So after COVID, and I have to say, we were kind of busting at the seams for the shows. I had been looking for more space, a more open space. My wish list was a more open space so that I could open it up for the receptions and the art shows. I also wanted room for myself to paint, and I really wanted better parking. I couldn't believe I found all three in the building that we're in now. This was a florist, you might know. It was a florist for 70 years. I had been driving by many times. They had moved their staff up to their shop in Summit during COVID, and they were going to renovate. So I called and I said, are you going to renovate, or would you consider leasing that space? They had been on the fence, so they said, it sounds like this would be a good fit. So I said, well, I'm going to paint it purple. They said, no problem. I said, I'd like to gut it. They said, no problem. So back to the UC-EDC, I let them know what I wanted to do, and again, they were very helpful. I was able to get a loan that I needed at a low interest rate, and further than that, they applied for a Tory Burch grant on my behalf and dropped it another 1.5%. So it is, if you're a small business owner, it's a great outfit to know. So this, the slide on the left is what I call my studio without walls. So that is right in the shop when you walk in on the left-hand side. I like to paint there. Whatever current project I'm working on is on that easel, and anybody stopping by can see what's going on there. The floor is the original floor. It's the only thing I kept from the old florist. It had actually had a fountain on it at one time when it was the flower shop, so it's a stone floor. But that kind of creates my little studio without wall space. I wanted to give you some examples of some of the things that we frame and talk about the frame shop and the back room and just how exciting it is there. So these are two examples of interesting mats that we do. The stars are cut into the mat board. This piece of art is a photograph that was taken by a customer of one of the murals in Asbury. She had it printed at DeGaulle printers in Manhattan. It's a gorgeous print. And she just was game for us to have fun with it. So she chose a bright pink lacquer frame, nice and shiny, and we cut the stars in to mimic the stars in her artwork. The piece on the left is an old one that Marty designed. Marty has worked with me. My staff is wonderful, and they've been with me for many years. Marty has worked with me for 18 years. And he's a whiz on the mat cutter. He's just a master. So our mat cutter is a computerized mat cutter. It's almost like a CAD program We can scan something and trace it and cut it, or we can just make designs. So these are flames that Marty made to complement this David Bowie piece. And I'd like to show you a little bit more about the back room. This is my staff. This is Judy. She's also been with me for 18 years. She was my teacher when I was 18 at Ducre School of Art. When I couldn't quite get my act together and I left Maryland right before Pitt, I needed to be doing something, so I went to this little art school in Plainfield, and Judy had been my teacher there. Years later, a friend recommended, when I was looking for help, that Judy come on board, and I said, Judy? How perfect. She had actually taught framing at Ducre back then, so it was nice to have her. So she's been with me all these years. And that's Marty, and he's cutting on the saw in the basement. Looking for a space, one of the critical things is I need a basement because we chop and join our moldings, we fabricate things with a table saw, and most of our equipment is pneumatic, so it requires an air compressor, and then the air is fed up to each. I have a frame joiner that's pneumatic, my computerized mat cutter, as well as at the fitting tables, we blow the dust off of the art. So having the basement to house that equipment is very important. So it looks a little dark down there, but he's got enough light. I wanted to show you some of the larger pieces that we do. When people ask me what I think has changed in framing over the years, I say it's the scale of the art. People have bigger walls now. So we do some large work. This new location is wonderful for the large pieces. I have quite a few interior designers. They bring me big things in a truck. I make them even bigger, and then they pick them up and take them. So this is Beatrice. She was with me for a long time, and she moved, and we miss her every day. But she's very happy and doing well for all of you who know and love Beatrice. She's showing us the scale of that large painting that was stretched. There's another one on Marty's table in the middle there, and that's probably about 72 inches, maybe 80 inches long, and 4 feet wide. And then that was a full-sized American flag that we had framed. We have slideshows running all the time on every computer in the shop, and Marty changes them regularly. And it's such a joy to look at the work that we've done over the years, and I'll stop and see something that I had completely forgotten about, and it's just a real pleasure for us to be able to remember all of the work, all of the pieces. These are some more large ones. That Mike Tyson is life-size, and then a Hulk Hogan behind him. We have a sports collector. And again, that picture of me with that large piece from earlier. We also do shadow boxes. My friend Nicole is here tonight, and her project is one of my favorites. It's in the center there. These are antique handbags and photographs that are all from her family. So I had many years ago, the wonderful opportunity to work with Nicole, and I think that's when we really got to know each other. She's a wonderful artist. She's a mosaic artist, and we clicked right away. And I think it was this project that we clicked over. This was another one of handbags that I loved that was just, I wanted to show you a shadow box that had a nice simplicity, a clean look, but designing at the counter is so much fun to present the work. When I told Marty I was adding shadow boxes, he said, make sure you include the Hess truck. That was his favorite. This one on the left is a loom. It was a small loom, but a large framed piece. So I wanted to show you this because we do a lot of dimensional work. We have framed horns, we've framed guitars. It's endless. I wish I could just flip through my entire show for you, but we are at the 62,000th work order. Wow. And since 2001 when we went computerized. Wow. Yeah. Wow. We probably frame, I think 60 to 80 pieces a week in our small shop with our small staff. We stay very busy. Yeah. I do wish I had a filing cabinet in my brain to remember everyone, but the slideshows, they take the place of that. I want to talk a little bit as my life as a painter now. You saw some of my earlier work. The new shop has the space to have my friends who are here tonight come and paint with me on Saturday nights. And it's open to anybody interested in painting from life, a portrait. So we have a clothed model. They pose from 6 until 9 o'clock. We do give them breaks. And some people paint, some draw, we sketch, but we get together and we throw money in a jar, we give it to the model at the end of the night, we just have a good time. So these are some of the examples of the models that have sat for us. I also have been known to recruit somebody from the street. I have run out into the street and say, you must sit for me. I get some good models that way. The painting on the left is one that is very dear to me. And this is my good friend, and he's here tonight. He is my friend from high school's dad. And when I was framing so much, we were so busy framing, and I wasn't really painting as much as I wanted to, Mr. Garabowski would come in, because he's an art collector, and he would have something interesting to show me. And I would say, I want to paint your portrait. And he'd say, when I retire. I said, great, because I'm really busy now anyway. So we kept going back and forth. And one day he walked in and said, I've retired. So he has sat for me many times. This is my favorite. It's only 12 by 12 inches. And I call it the art collector. Now, I know he would probably love to have it, but I tell him that it hangs in the shop, I enjoy it every day, and when I'm ready to part with it, then I'll pass it along. But it's pretty special to me. This, the one in the center is a gentleman that was a huge compliment from his wife when she said it looked like her husband, the sitter, his father, and his brother all in one. And then I just love the one on the left. She sort of feels to me like my earlier work, even though she was done in the style of my later work. And it's Gina, yeah. So this is just to show you kind of what it looks like when we have a model posing. Rebecca is Marty's daughter. She's posed for me many times, and she's game to wear costumes. So here she's a pirate. She's been a witch. She's worn funny ears. She's a lot of fun to paint. Sarah's in the center. They've also sat for me many times. That was one of Beatrice's paintings, I think. But I loved the velvet jacket. I got a good painting that night as well. And the gentleman on the left is a professional model. So he decided to dress up as Pan for us. He had furry pants on and an ivy necklace. I wanted to show you a painting in progress. This is a piece that I did recently with my friends over at South Avenue Arts. There was a model for 5 weeks. We painted 3 hours on Thursday. So it's a 15-hour painting. But back to the grisaille. This is a grisaille, so it's the shades of gray in the middle, done in purple, which I have a lot of purple in my paintings. It truly is my favorite color. That would have been the first 3 hours. I draw in paint, and I figure out the drawing as well as where the major light source will be when I start a painting. This is the second pass at it the following week, where I really start working where I want you to look first. So I focus on the light and what I feel will be what is of interest to me in the painting. And then the large on the left is some progression into the painting, and then I'd like to show it to you completed. In the background is our friend Rich. He paints at South Ave Arts also. So I called the painting The Painter, because you see him back there painting her. And this one had been accepted into a show at the Salmagundi Club in New York, and it was with the Catherine Lorillard Wolf Foundation. It's an all-women show, and I just picked this up the other night. It had been hanging for a month, and it was just wonderful to see it on the wall with other figurative work. They hung all the figures on one wall, and then they had their still life and landscape throughout the rest of the gallery. So it was wonderful to see this painting with the other pieces. I do a lot of plein air, so most everybody in here knows me well enough to know that they'll find me on the street somewhere painting outdoors. I started plein air painting when my kids were very little. I did mostly nocturnes because it was the only time I could get a chunk of time. They would go to bed, I would go out and paint for 3 hours under a book light. So this is a nocturne on the left. LBI, my friend Laura asked me, was I there this summer? I paint in LBI every summer for the foundation. They have a show in September with 40 artists. We all paint about 4 paintings throughout the course of July and August. So it's a wonderful time to get together with my art friends that I might not have seen for the year before, and to just have fun at LBI. When I paint at the amusement park, which is, I think, my favorite place, the kids go crazy. They love to see the painting. They're fascinated by it. And I have to say that a very generous person one night left a $5 bill on my palette, and I never saw them do it. I went down to dip some paint and thought, oh, there's ice cream money. The photograph here is LBI at Viking Village near Barnegat Lighthouse. I'm painting the tugboat there, and I was there that day to paint, and my friend Charles Miller, who's a photographer, I have shown his work in the shop, he just happened to be there that day. I said, Charles, and he said, I'm going to take your shot, and he took this picture, and it truly is one of my favorites. It was a great day. And he is very generous, said I may use it wherever I like, so I've posted it a few places. These are some examples of my plein air in Westfield. I love to paint at Mindawaskan Park. This was in January. It was cold, there were no leaves on the trees, and the thing that was amazing, there are 1 million squirrels in that park. While I was painting, I'm thinking, what is that noise? It wasn't until I was probably an hour in that I could hear the chatter. It was this chatter of these squirrels. But it was a great day, and I love the, I've always loved the steeple. I grew up in the Presbyterian church, so that's very special to me. And it's wonderful to paint in the winter. The paint is stiff, it behaves. In the summer, it slips and slides all over the canvas. I might be freezing, but my paint is in its best state in the wintertime. This one's from the top of the circle. I found a great place you could just kind of perch yourself up there and capture the whole beauty of the architecture in the circle. That little one is just a quick little downtown painting. It was recently sold, and I did it standing on the corner, you know, near Ferraro's, that corner, and looking back at Arcanum Hall. That was a lot of fun. That was a tiny little painting. I had mentioned I like to do nocturnes. My favorite place to do nocturnes is Manhattan. I have a friend, Garen Baker, who's he's a pretty famous artist. He's outstanding. He turned me on to painting in New York. So he was teaching a workshop through the Art Students League, and I thought, what a great way to spend time with him, and a great way to learn from him and to check out New York. So he's got terrific locations, has introduced me to many of them, and the Brooklyn Bridge is always my go-to. This one I did on an afternoon, and you could hear them yelling, "Ice water, dollar, ice water, dollar," the whole time. Very distracting. But this was when they allowed, just right before they stopped allowing those umbrella vendors. But I love, I tell people, they say, you know, how do you paint outside? People stop, they ask you questions. I say, I love the circus of it all. I really do. And that painting for me kind of shows you the circus of it all. These are just a couple more examples. Again, the Brooklyn Bridge. This was a small painting, and if you look, you can see there was a wedding couple. It was like misting. It was so beautiful and atmospheric that day. And there was this wedding couple with their umbrella having their photo taken. It was cold, it was April, and I was sitting on one of those rocks. I must have been there for about 3 hours, and when I stood up to leave, I realized I had no feeling in my legs. There is a very steep hill to get to the subway from where I was. So I found a pub. I went in. I said I'd like a burger and a beer. He said, we just opened. It's going to be a little while on the burger. I said, great, because I can't feel my legs. The wonderful thing about plein air painting is there is always a story with every painting. The painting on the right is from South Street Seaport. There's a great dock there that you can paint. Yeah, I've done that a few times. I really enjoy it. I've painted away from home. These are 2 examples. The one on the left is a workshop in Alabama. There's an artist that I admire and follow, Chong Wong. He was teaching a workshop. I said, this is a great opportunity to get a change of scenery. I learned a ton and had just a wonderful time meeting the people in Alabama. I was an accommodating place to stay. It was really a neat week away from Cranford. The one on the right is a plein air event in the Adirondacks. I do, like LBI, I do a couple of events. I used to do 2 to 3 a year. I kind of scaled back. Usually, like in the Adirondacks, they're a week long. You have a week to make as many paintings as you can. They are judged, juried by a judge, and there's usually prize money and an opportunity to sell work. It's a great time to just be very intense, though, and think about painting and just really focus. So I've had some great paintings come out of those Adirondacks trips. I've done it a couple years. And because I love plein air so much, I started doing a community paint out. So many of the people in this room have come to the paint out, painted, or just come to see the work. We do it the 3rd Sunday of September, and it's a lot of fun. People that have painted before, they know what they're in for, the circus of it all. And those that have never painted before, it's a good opportunity to be with other artists, to be comfortable working outside, and I always hope that it's encouraged somebody to continue painting outside because it's a wonderful way to just meet people and enjoy nature. This is the old shop. This is one of the early plein air events. We have had 10, I think. This is just a great picture of one of our community receptions that we had around that time when we started doing them for art associations. And that's about it. That's my self-portrait. Actually, that was painted in the basement of the old shop. I didn't have a studio. I didn't have a place to paint. And so I would go downstairs in the old basement. It's even worse than my now basement because I could still hear what was going on up there in case they needed me, but I could focus on the painting. So I wanted to capture myself. It was cold. I always wore my skull and cap, and you can see the rafters above. But I do want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I was overwhelmed to see so many faces, people I haven't seen in a while, my friends that I paint with. This is a wonderful experience and opportunity, and there's nothing I like better than talking shop.
We have a few minutes for questions, so we have about 10 minutes for questions. If anyone needs a mic, shout out.
Yeah. Is it on? Yeah. Oh, more than a question, a comment. I like to think of myself as an artist, and I just want to say that Stefanie is so supportive of artists. She has all kinds of services that she makes available to us, cutting mats, framing, the thing that makes the paper go flat. What is that? Press or something? And not only that, when you go in with a piece of work, everybody in the shop comes to see the piece of work, and you get a little critique, always positive. But it's just such a welcoming atmosphere in that store, and set, of course, by Steffi. So, thank you, Steffi.
I'll bellow. What's the weirdest thing you've ever framed?
It's very good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I thought I might get that question, and I was racking my brain. I used to have a standard answer for that, and I thought by now I would have come up with something different, but I haven't. This was very early on, a job that I did. It's very strange. This young man went to study in, I believe it was South Africa, and the souvenir he brought home was made out of ostrich, but I think it was worn by a man, like a cup. And his mother said he would like to have this framed in a shadow box. So I don't know if I've topped it and I just don't remember, if that's just always going to be the weirdest thing.
So can I summarize that as an ostrich jockstrap?
Exactly, Barb. Exactly.
I'll talk. You mentioned the American Express commission that you did. Do you do corporate commissions like that?
Oh,
Is that
thanks for
unusual?
asking. We live in such, we're very lucky where we live. There are so many people that commute to Manhattan. Everybody in this room, so many different careers. Everybody has really interesting careers. So the corporate work that I've been fortunate to do usually comes from somebody who has done retail with me or has just seen the shop riding by on the bus. So I'm lucky. A nice corporate job for me is maybe 20 to 60 pieces. I've had some that are local. Elizabeth did a wonderful job for the Community Access Unlimited there recently. The American Express job was going into Manhattan, but those jobs come to me usually from somebody that has found me through retail work or, again, just saw me on their commute. But we love to get them. It's nice for the business. And I don't know, it's just a change of pace. You're doing usually 20 to 60 things that are very similar. We're not used to we don't, in our daily work, do assembly line work. I did that years ago. I like the retail where it's, 1 to 5 pieces. We're talking about the art. It's all very personal, but there's something nice in some cookie cutter work. Yeah.
I actually have I was so struck by your the work you did during the MFA and the teaching that you had. The idea of looking at the body that down to the skeleton and the musculature.
Yeah, so the anatomy we learn is, as artists, is really the anatomy that applies to how we define the light on the model, how we depict the model. So things that are more perceptually seen rather than what's underneath. But a lot of the time when you're drawing from life, something might not make quite sense. So if you know the anatomy, if you know what's supposed to be happening, it helps to define that. The goal is to make it look real. When you paint in landscape, you can kind of design the tree however you want the tree to be, because we know it's a tree. But when you're painting the human form, we know what it's supposed to look like. So it's very helpful to know the anatomy to kind of figure, when you can't quite tell what it is perceptually, you have that knowledge to know what it should be. Mm-hmm.
What do you prefer, the landscape or the doing the?
Oh, I love them equally. I love the portraits the most because I get to meet people. When I was at Pitt, I would see somebody on the bus a few times in a row. They'd have the same schedule as me, and they'd be fascinating looking. And I'd ask if they would come back to my apartment and sit for me. I really did. And I got to know people that way, and I just really enjoyed hearing their story. They're very vulnerable when they sit there, but I'm very vulnerable because I don't know how it's going to come out. So there are people in this room like Mark who have sat for me, and I've learned so much. He's a musician, a guitarist, very passionate, and these are things I wouldn't know otherwise. So it's a nice opportunity to have somebody trapped that they have to kind of chat with me and spend time with me.
Do you then give them the portrait? Did you then give it to them? Or
Not
you
yet.
This is kind of how it works. When they have sat for me as a friend, I usually love the portrait and want to keep it for a while. It ends up being very dear to me. So Mark's currently hanging in the shop, and as I mentioned, Mr. Garbowski's got his spot in the shop. But at a point, I'm ready to let go. But it does take me years. Yeah, Mark.
So you mentioned your chocolate lab.
Yes.
Do you ever paint your dog?
Yes. I do. It's funny. I paint. I mostly of my children, including the furry one. I mostly paint my daughter. She goes to school in another state, and I miss her. So if you come into the shop now, she's on the easel. She's on the easel a lot. I have painted my chocolate lab because she's not really my dog. She's my husband's dog. So those are his paintings. And I paint her for him. My son, he's a little tricky and doesn't like to see himself in paint. So I've done a few things that he's not aware of.
That will be our secret. I'm also, as you get to know, like if people you've painted who you know, that's one thing. But as you're painting someone you don't know, have you found the painting changes as you get to know them?
That's a great question. There's a wonderful book by Lucian Freud. He's the grandson of Sigmund Freud, and he's an incredible artist, shows at the Met, beautiful paintings, and I'm very inspired by his work. He wrote a book called The Blue Scarf, and it is from the view of a sitter who is an art critic. And he talks about the changes that occur through the course of the painting. Lucian Freud takes years sometimes to do a painting, often many, many months. But he was very particular with this one sitter to not change his hair. So it's funny because the person physically changes over time if it's a painting that goes over the course of time. And then, of course, as we're talking and I get to know them better, then I do feel like the painting evolves that way as well. I feel like I find the feeling in the person that I've either connected with or they seem to be at their best, and I try to capture that. So it's this way of remembering what that one look was and using the rest of the looks as reference to capture that. It's cool. But Mark did sit for me twice, and there was time in between, and he was very careful not to change his hair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, always when I see you, you're always busy, you're always working, and you're so welcoming and you're so friendly to everybody. You're just wonderful.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
That's why so many people came to see you. But how do you organize your time to do so much? Do you consider yourself a very organized person?
That's a good question. I have to say, I wish I could say I'm balanced, but some things get more attention than others at any given time. But I am usually in constant motion. When I go home, if I'm not then doing my housework and those chores, I am sleeping. I kind of have two speeds, like full speed ahead and nothing. Yes.
Well, I want to thank you, Stefanie. This was wonderful. You were wonderful, and your skill, your skill, your love for community, your love for humanity is so apparent. I'm very glad you went to the frame shop with your mother. Awesome. I didn't at the beginning give our commercial, which is the Hale Speaker Series. What year is this, Linnea?
16.
This was 16?
Yeah.
So next year starts our 17th year, and we exist, the friends of the library. So, make it all happen for us. So really want to thank the friends. And the Glasser Foundation gives us donation every year. So just so appreciative of that as well. We are meeting tomorrow, the committee, to start looking at next year. So remember, when you come in the library, if you don't come in the library, start coming in the library and look for our little poster in the front of who will be speaking next year, and please sign up. And I just want to share, and I know now I'm 30 seconds over, I just want to share a perspective. So I'm a social worker, retired. One of the things in psychotherapy that is a concept is called reframing. And it is literally that so you take a picture, somebody brings in a picture, the picture doesn't change. It's how it's matted and framed that changes. And that's true in our lives. So a reality, something that's happening, happens. But how we see it, how we frame it, how we mat it, changes how we experience it. So, I love what you do. Thank you all for coming tonight. Be safe on your way home. The library officially closes, what time?
Not till 8:30.
Not till 8:30.
But if it's easier for everybody to go